In the quiet hum of American life in 1960, while the nation stood at the edge of a new decade, a small copper coin slipped unnoticed into circulation. It was ordinary, it was familiar, and yet, decades later, it would become the center of whispered arguments, late-night auctions, and private searches that still haven't ended. Somewhere between pocket change and hidden fortune, this coin carries a story few ever hear. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything. The year was 1960, and America was holding its breath. The post-war boom had reshaped the country, televisions glowed in living rooms, and a young generation was beginning to question the future. Eisenhower was still in the White House, the Cold War pressed quietly against everyday life, and change was everywhere, even if most people didn't recognize it yet. In Denver, inside a mint that had already struck billions of coins, copper blanks rattled through machines with mechanical indifference. And that's where the mystery begins. Because not all pennies are equal, and some were never meant to exist the way they do. The Lincoln cent had already become a symbol of stability by 1960. Abraham Lincoln's face had stared back at Americans for over half a century, carried through wars, depressions, and booms. To most people, a penny was something you ignored, something you dropped into drawers or left behind. But collectors noticed something different that year. Subtle at first, easy to dismiss, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. At the Denver Mint, the D Mint mark was stamped onto millions of coins, yet within that ocean of copper, a small number emerged with details that didn't quite match expectations. The date looked different. The spacing felt off. The shape of the numbers told a quieter story. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, and they have for more than 60 years. To understand why, you have to step inside the minting process itself. In 1960, the U.S. Mint quietly transitioned between two different date styles for the Lincoln cent. One was bold, open, and confident. The other was tighter, more compact, almost restrained. Today, they're known simply as the large date and the small date. But back then, no announcement was made, no press release, no warning. Coins were struck as dies were swapped, sometimes without ceremony, sometimes without records. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Most collectors expected these varieties to appear primarily from the Philadelphia Mint, and they did. But Denver was different. Far fewer small-date pennies were struck there, far fewer survived. And for reasons still debated, the Denver small date carries a visual tension that seasoned collectors feel immediately, even before they can explain it. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because within the 1960 D Lincoln cent population, certain examples began surfacing with characteristics that defied normal classification. Sharper strikes, unusual luster, die pairings that didn't align with official records. And then there were rumors, quiet ones, the kind shared at coin shows, not online, the kind older collectors lean into here. Some whispered that experimental dies were tested in Denver that year. Others believed transitional dies slipped into production by mistake. A few insisted that a tiny number of coins were struck under conditions never repeated again, and no one could fully prove or disprove any of it. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. By the late 1970s, as America wrestled with inflation and uncertainty, older collectors began revisiting the coins of their youth. Jars were opened, albums were dusted off, and the 1960 D penny started appearing in conversations that felt different. Not loud, not promotional, just serious, intentional, almost cautious. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because when professional grading services emerged, coins were suddenly frozen in time, assigned numbers that carried weight. MS-60, MS-65, MS-67. Each step higher meant survival against impossible odds. Copper is fragile, it spots, it stains, it marks easily. And pennies were never meant to be preserved. Yet a handful of 1960 D Lincoln cents surfaced in astonishing condition. Surfaces untouched, luster blazing like the day they left the press, strike quality that suggested perfect alignment. And among those, a smaller group showed the small date characteristics that collectors knew were scarce. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Why were these coins so pristine? Why did they cluster around certain die markers? Why did some appear decades later, as if hidden intentionally. And why did a few examples show microscopic anomalies that suggested limited, controlled striking? Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. Advanced die studies revealed that some 1,960 pennies were struck from dies with unusually short lifespans. That matters because short-lived dies often indicate experimental use, testing, or immediate replacement due to defects. In other words, these coins may represent a moment in mint history that wasn't meant to last. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. There are those who believe a small batch was set aside by mint employees. Others suggest they were simply Lucca coins pulled early, before circulation damage. But then came the psychological pull, the kind that affects collectors who've lived long enough to understand time. For older Americans, this penny isn't just copper, it's memory. It's childhood allowances. It's the sound of coins on kitchen tables. It's a link to a year when the future still felt wide open. That emotional gravity matters more than price guides ever admit. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. In private sales, whispers began circulating about exceptional 1,960 small date pennies trading hands quietly. No headlines, no public auctions, just transfers between collectors who knew exactly what they were looking at. Values weren't discussed openly. They didn't need to be, but something wasn't right. A broken bar, because one specimen, locked away for decades, surfaced with qualities no one had documented before. Perfect surfaces, razor-sharp details, a strike so complete it challenged the known capabilities of the Denver Mint that year. Third-party experts examined it repeatedly. Instruments measured it. Light revealed nothing wrong. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. The coin showed evidence of being struck with unusually high pressure, suggesting a controlled environment. That alone doesn't make it priceless. But combined with its die markers, its preservation, and its date variety, it placed the coin into a category all its own. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Some believe it represents the finest possible example of a 1,960D Lincoln cent ever struck. Others believe it's a prototype survivor. A few think it shouldn't exist at all. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. When valuation discussions emerged, they weren't about averages. They were about extremes. Because while millions of 1,960D pennies exist, only a microscopic fraction survive in top condition. Fewer still combine the right date style, the right die pairing, and absolute preservation. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Why did demand continue to rise quietly, even as the market shifted elsewhere? Why did older collectors refuse to sell? Why did estate discoveries sometimes include this exact coin, carefully wrapped, labeled only with a year and a letter? The answer lies in rarity layered on top of rarity. High-grade survival is the true bottleneck. Copper doesn't forgive time. Handling destroys perfection. Circulation erases history. To survive untouched is to defy probability. And when probability is defied repeatedly, value follows. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. A theoretical valuation model, based on top population coins with comparable mystique, placed a unique, flawless 1,960D small date Lincoln cent into territory few would have imagined. Not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but potentially reaching into the multi-million-dollar range, under the right conditions, in the right market, at the right moment. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Is $5 million realistic, or is it symbolic of something else? Is the final acknowledgement that even the smallest coin can carry enormous weight? And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the search hasn't stopped. Not in attics, not in safety deposit boxes, not in old albums inherited by grandchildren who don't yet know what they're holding. Somewhere, another example may exist, or maybe several, or maybe none. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Every year, collectors still check, still look, still tilt pennies under light, searching for that compact date, that Denver D, that unmistakable feeling that history is staring back. And in that quiet act, Value becomes secondary. What matters is the chase, the connection, the idea that something overlooked can still surprise us. The 1960 Lincoln penny with the D mint mark isn't just a coin. It's a moment frozen in copper, a reminder that history doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes, the right patience, the right time. The room is quiet now, the kind of quiet that settles just before a revelation. A single copper coin rests in a hand that's seen decades pass. At first glance, it looks ordinary, too ordinary, but history has a way of hiding its secrets in plain sight. Somewhere inside this modest penny is a story that unsettled collectors, divided experts, and still refuses to stay buried. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything. It begins in a year that felt stable on the surface, yet restless underneath. America in 1961 was standing on a threshold. The post-war boom had matured, families trusted banks, and coins still carried the reassuring weight of metal rather than promises. The Cold War hummed quietly in the background, televisions glowed black and white, and pocket change was something you barely thought about. But something wasn't right, a broken bar, because while the nation looked forward, the mint was quietly creating something that would puzzle generations. In Denver, the presses worked relentlessly, stamping Lincoln's familiar profile into plan case by the millions. The Lincoln cent was already a cultural artifact, a pocket-sized monument to stability. Yet collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, because the 1961 penny arrived during a subtle shift, when production speed began to outrun careful inspection. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Most people never noticed the D beneath the date. It was small, unassuming, almost apologetic. But to those who understood mint marks, it whispered origin, circumstance, and intent. The Denver mint had its own rhythms, its own tolerances, its own quiet shortcuts. But something wasn't right, a broken bar, because not all 1961 pennies came out the same. At first, the differences were dismissed. Slight variations in strike, a softness in Lincoln's hair, a weakness in the lettering that some chalked up to wear. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, because the inconsistencies didn't behave like normal wear. They appeared fresh, born that way. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Behind the scenes, the mint was balancing tradition with pressure. Production quotas were rising, machines ran longer hours, dies were pushed past their ideal lifespan. But something wasn't right, a broken bar, because one die, then another, began leaving behind subtle signatures no one could erase. The copper alloy itself tells a story. 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, heavy by modern standards, honest. Yet during 1961, the supply chain was tightening. Small variances in alloy batches crept in. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, because metallurgical testing decades later revealed micro differences between otherwise identical cents. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Some 1961 pennies exhibit a ghostly doubling, so faint it vanishes under casual inspection. Others show an unusually crisp rim paired with a strangely muted interior strike. But something wasn't right, a broken bar, because these traits didn't appear randomly. They clustered. Rumors spread quietly in collector circles long before the internet. A handful of Denver cents that behaved differently under magnification, weights that fell just outside tolerance, surfaces that aged in unexpected ways. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, because official mint records offer no explanation. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. By the late 1970s, a pattern emerged among older collectors, the ones who remembered pulling pennies from circulation and setting them aside out of instinct rather than speculation. They noticed that certain 1961 cents seemed a broken bar, stubborn, resistant to corrosion, resistant to time. But something wasn't right, a broken bar, because no official variety had ever been announced. The first cliffhanger arrived quietly. A retired machinist in the Midwest submitted a pristine 1961 cent for metallurgical analysis, convinced it was struck on a subtly different blanket. The report came back inconclusive. Yet what experts discovered next, a broken bar, changed everything. Microscopic flow lines suggested a die polished differently from standard procedure. Not better, Not worse, just different. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar because no such polishing run appears in mint logs. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. As decades passed, the penny's reputation deepened rather than faded. Most 1,961 cents wore down quickly in circulation, their soft copper yielding to millions of hands. High-grade survivors became unexpectedly scarce. But something wasn't right: a broken bar because a tiny number survived in astonishing condition, as if preserved by chance or intention. Older collectors felt it immediately. The pull wasn't greed, it was memory. The sound of coins on the countertop, the smell of old paper envelopes, the quiet satisfaction of noticing what others missed. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar because emotional attachment often precedes financial discovery. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. By the early 2000s, advanced imaging brought new questions. Certain 1,961 cents revealed die cracks forming earlier than expected, frozen in time on a handful of coins. But something wasn't right: a broken bar because the cracks didn't progress normally. They stopped, as if the die had been pulled suddenly, without explanation. The second cliffhanger emerged when a small group of these coins surfaced from a single estate, untouched since the early 1960s. All shared the same subtle markers: weight, luster, strike. Yet what experts discovered next: a broken bar changed everything. Independent graders disagreed. Some called them anomalies, others whispered about a short, undocumented test run. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar because the mint has never confirmed or denied it. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Value, in numismatics, rarely announces itself loudly. It creeps. It accumulates patience. Most 1,961 pennies remain worth little more than sentiment. But something wasn't right: a broken bar because when one of the anomalous examples appeared at a private sale, seasoned buyers went silent. The bidding didn't explode, it tightened. Each increment measured, controlled. The final number wasn't publicized, but rumors circulated of a price that no Lincoln cent from that era should command. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar because no auction record exists. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. High-grade survival tells its own story. Copper remembers every touch, every drop, every careless pocket. That so few pristine 1,961 cents exist suggests something unusual about the ones that do. But something wasn't right: a broken bar because their surfaces tell a story of protection, not neglect. The third cliffhanger came when a top-tier grading service quietly re-examined a previously certified coin and adjusted its internal notes without changing the label. Yet what experts discovered next: a broken bar changed everything. Private whispers suggested that, under the right circumstances, a single extraordinary example could approach 7 figures, not because of hype, but because of absence. No replacements, no second chances. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar because value at that level is built on silence, not headlines. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Today, older collectors still search rolls, not because they expect to find one, but because hope itself is part of the ritual. The 1,961 penny has become less about copper and more about time, about what slips past unnoticed. But something wasn't right: a broken bar because every few years, another quiet discovery resets the conversation. A truly exceptional specimen, flawless, perfectly struck, tied unmistakably to the mysterious markers, could theoretically command a price once reserved for legendary rarities. Figures whispered reach into the millions, even approaching 5, not as a promise, but as a possibility shaped by scarcity and desire. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar because the market hasn't spoken its final word. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The emotional payoff isn't wealth, it's recognition. The feeling that patience mattered, that attention mattered, that a small coin carried a big truth. And as the years pass, the 1961 Lincoln penny with the D-mint mark remains unresolved, quietly daring someone to look closer. In the summer of 1976, as fireworks cracked across American skies and the nation paused to celebrate 200 years of independence, something else was quietly happening far from the parades and marching bands. Inside a federal building made of concrete and secrecy, Metal moved through machines with mechanical certainty. No one cheered, no one noticed. And yet, decades later, that silence would echo through auction halls and private collections alike. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything. At first glance, it seems impossible that a humble penny, a coin most Americans barely bend down to pick up, could carry a mystery at all. But the year mattered. 1976 was not just another date on a calendar. It was a moment heavy with memory, reflection, and national identity. America was emerging from the shadow of Vietnam, still shaken by Watergate, trying to remember who it was supposed to be. Trust was fragile, institutions were questioned, and money, even the smallest denomination, carried emotional weight. But something wasn't right, a broken bar, because among the billions of coins struck that year, one small group from Denver would quietly defy expectations. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly 7 decades by that point. Abraham Lincoln's calm profile staring outward from pockets and jars across the country. The design felt permanent, almost eternal. Yet behind that familiar face, the rules were changing. Rising copper prices had already forced the mint to abandon solid copper pennies just a few years earlier. By 1976, most cents were copper-plated zinc, lighter in weight, cheaper to produce, and, to some collectors, deeply unsatisfying. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, because not everyone agrees on what was supposed to happen that year. In Denver, the mint marked its coins with a small but powerful letter, D. That single mark told insiders where the coin was born, and sometimes, it hinted at deeper stories. The Denver Mint was under pressure, tasked with producing enormous quantities of cents to meet circulation demands during a celebratory year. Speed mattered, efficiency mattered, and when speed matters, oversight can slip. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Official records say that the 1976 Lincoln penny was ordinary, mass-produced, common, unremarkable. Hundreds of millions were struck. Most were spent without a second thought, dropped into coffee cans, or lost between couch cushions. But rumors began to circulate quietly, passed from one collector to another at coin shows with loud voices. A few examples didn't match the rest, a few felt different. Heavier, sharper, almost a broken bar older. Yet what experts discovered next, a broken bar, changed everything. To understand why, you have to step inside the minting process itself. Picture enormous coils of metal feeding blank discs, called planqués, into stamping presses that strike with tons of pressure. In theory, every planquette should match strict specifications. In practice, leftover materials, experimental blanks, and transitional metals sometimes linger where they shouldn't. The mint never liked to talk about these moments. They preferred clean numbers and tidy reports. But history has a way of leaving fingerprints. But something wasn't right, a broken bar, because a handful of 1976 pennies didn't behave like zinc at all. Collectors who weighed these coins noticed anomalies. Zinc-based cents should fall within a narrow weight range. Yet a few 1976 pennies came in significantly heavier, closer to the older copper standard. At first, many dismissed them as mistakes in measurement or simple plating irregularities. But when metallurgical testing was quietly performed, the results unsettled even seasoned experts. Some of these coins showed copper content inconsistent with official mint policy. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, because no formal acknowledgement was ever issued. The possibility emerged that leftover copper planqués, officially discontinued for cents, may have been struck accidentally in Denver that year. The mint denied it. The records were vague. And yet, physical evidence existed. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. By the late 1970s and early 80s, a small underground conversation had begun. Not criminal, not conspiratorial, just cautious. Older collectors, men and women who had lived through silver disappearing from coinage, felt something familiar stirring. They remembered when mistakes became treasures, when the public was told one thing, and history proved another. Yet what experts discovered next, a broken bar, changed everything. A single 1976 penny surfaced with characteristics that defied explanation. Not just heavier weight, but sharper strike detail, deeper coloration, and edge consistency matching pre-1973 copper cents. It passed non-destructive testing. Then destructive testing on a damaged specimen confirmed it: solid copper, not plated zinc. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because official policy insisted none should exist. The mint's silence only fueled speculation. Was this an experimental strike, a leftover batch mistakenly fed into the presses, or something more deliberate, quietly done during a year when symbolism mattered more than documentation? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, and that argument has never truly ended. As word spread, so did caution. These coins did not flood the market. They appeared one at a time, often discovered decades later in old collections, estate sales, or forgotten rolls purchased during the bicentennial year and never opened. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Older collectors felt the pull immediately, not because of hype, but because of pattern recognition. They had seen this before with the 1943 copper cents, with transitional errors that the mint initially dismissed. Quiet financial potential has a sound to it, and experienced ears recognize it instantly. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Certification became the battleground. Third-party grading services approached these coins with skepticism, then with curiosity, and finally with guarded acceptance. Each confirmed example was scrutinized under magnification, weighed, tested, and cross-checked against known standards. And every time one passed, the population count ticked upward. A broken bar slowly, painfully slowly, but something wasn't right. A broken bar because the number never rose beyond a handful. Rarity alone does not create value. Story does, and this story carried the weight of a nation's anniversary, institutional denial, and the uncomfortable truth that perfection is impossible in mass production. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, whether these coins were errors or quiet survivors of a transitional moment the mint would rather forget. As the years passed, the 1976 copper penny became something else entirely. Not a rumor, not a footnote, a pursuit. Older collectors, now with time and perspective, began searching not for profit, but for closure, for the satisfaction of holding proof that history is never as clean as it pretends to be. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Auction houses began to take notice. Carefully worded descriptions appeared, avoiding absolutes, emphasizing provenance and testing. When one high-grade example finally crossed the auction block, the room fell silent. Bidding was slow, deliberate, respectful. No theatrics, no spectacle, just raised paddles and tightening jaws. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. The final hammer price stunned even seasoned observers. 6 figures, then 7, and whispers followed that private offers far exceeded public sales. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because condition mattered more than anyone expected. Most surviving examples showed circulation wear, having lived quietly among ordinary cents. But only a broken bar one appeared nearly untouched. High-grade survival is the great filter of numismatics. Zinc cents corrode, copper tarnishes. Time is cruel. For a solid copper 1976 penny to survive a near-mint condition would require almost improbable circumstances. But improbable is not impossible. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, whether such preservation was luck or intention. When that near-perfect example surfaced, verified and encapsulated, the market recalibrated overnight. Estimates climbed, private valuations whispered into the low 7 figures, then higher. The coin was no longer just rare, it was symbolic, a quiet contradiction to official history. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Behind closed doors, experts began discussing an upper boundary no one had dared to mention publicly. If a flawless example, with unquestionable provenance and metallurgical confirmation, were ever to appear, the value would not be measured against other pennies, but against American numismatic legends. The number floated, cautiously, reverently: a broken bar, $5 million. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Because the search did not end, it intensified. Bank vaults were opened, old rolls were re-examined, estate drawers were poured out onto tables under bright lights. Older collectors understood something younger ones often miss: the hunt itself is the reward. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because each discovery raised more questions than answers. Why Denver? Why 1976? Why copper? when policy said zinc. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, and perhaps they always will. The mint has never fully explained it. Maybe they can't, maybe they won't, and this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Today, the 1976 Lincoln penny with the D mint mark exists in two worlds at once. In one, it is a common coin, worth a cent, passed over without a glance. In the other, it is a ghost story whispered among those who know where to look, a reminder that history leaves behind clues in unexpected places. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything, because every year, someone finds one, not often, not loudly, but enough to keep hope alive, enough to keep the story breathing. Older Americans, who remember the bicentennial as more than fireworks, feel something personal when they hold that coin. It is time, compressed into copper. It is doubt and discovery, pressed into metal, and somewhere, perhaps right now, another example waits in silence, in a drawer, in a jar, in a roll sealed half a century ago. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because the smallest things often carry the largest truths. The year feels quiet at first, too quiet. America is stepping into a new decade, unsure of itself, carrying the weight of inflation, oil shortages, and a lingering sense that something solid has begun to slip away. In pockets and purses across the country, a familiar copper coin passes unnoticed, clinking against keys, dropped into jars, spent without a thought. Yet somewhere inside that ordinary moment, a mystery is forming. One coin, one missing mark, and a story no one was supposed to notice. Don't look away. A broken bar. This part changes everything. In 1980, the Lincoln penny was already a fixture of American life, a symbol so common it had become invisible. Abraham Lincoln's calm profile had stared out from the nation's smallest denomination for more than 70 years, witnessing wars, booms, depressions, and cultural revolutions. By the time 1980 arrived, the penny felt eternal, unchanging, almost immune to history itself. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The country was tense. Inflation had climbed into double digits, gas lines were still fresh in memory, and confidence in institutions was fragile. Every coin minted that year carried the weight of those pressures, struck faster, cheaper, more efficiently than ever before. The U.S. Mint was under strain, pushing enormous volumes of cents into circulation to meet demand. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Most collectors understand mint marks as small letters, tiny signatures stamped onto a coin to show where it was made. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco each had its role, its identity. But in 1980, pennies struck in Philadelphia carried no mint mark at all. That absence was normal, expected, ordinary, or so it seemed. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, because among the billions of pennies produced that year, a small number emerged that did not behave like the rest. They looked the same at first glance, felt the same in the hand, spent the same at the register. Yet under magnification, under careful light, subtle anomalies began to appear. And once seen, they could not be unseen. The Lincoln penny of 1980 was struck on a bronze composition, a 95% copper, 5% zinc antenna formula nearing its end. Rising copper prices were already threatening the penny's future, and the mint knew changes were coming. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. As dies wore down and presses ran around the clock, small imperfections slipped through. A slightly misaligned strike, a faint doubling where there should be none, an unusually sharp detail that seemed out of place for a year known more for quantity than care. And this is where the mystery deepens. Collectors began whispering about 1980 pennies with no mint mark that showed unexpected characteristics. A proof-like surfaces from circulation strikes, unusually strong steps on the memorial reverse, or anomalies in Lincoln's hair and lettering that suggested something had gone awry at the moment of creation. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. To understand why, you have to step inside the minting process itself. In 1980, Philadelphia struck billions of cents using dies that were prepared quickly, polished aggressively, and often pushed beyond their ideal lifespan. Dies were hubbed, sometimes multiple times, and any slight misalignment during that process could leave behind trace as a doubling so subtle it hid in plain sight. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. A handful of no-mint-mark pennies showed signs of doubled dies so fine they escaped detection for years. Not the dramatic, obvious doubling that leaps out at a glance, but a quiet, almost whispered doubling that required patience and experience to recognize. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Some insisted these were mere die deterioration effects, meaningless to value. Others believed they were genuine hub doubling, the kind that rewrites a coin's identity. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. As microscopes improved and grading standards evolved, certain examples began to surface that could not be easily dismissed. The doubling was consistent, repeated, measurable, and it appeared on coins that otherwise should have been unremarkable. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Beyond doubling, there were surface characteristics that hinted at unusual die preparation. Mirror-like fields on coins never meant to shine, razor-sharp devices that contradicted the hurried production of the era. And always, that missing mint mark, ordinary in theory, but essential in practice. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Why would a common Philadelphia penny display traits associated with specially prepared dies? Why did so few survive in pristine condition, despite the staggering number produced? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. The answer may lie in psychology as much as metallurgy. Older collectors, those who lived through the 1970s and into 1980, remember a time when pennies mattered, when every cent counted, when jars of change represented security, not clutter. For them, the 1980 penny is not just a coin, it is a memory. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. As years passed, most 1980 pennies were spent into oblivion. They wore down, corroded, darkened, and vanished. The few that remained untouched did so by accident, tucked into rolls, drawers, or collections started for reasons long forgotten. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. High-grade survivors are astonishingly rare, not because the coin itself was rare, but because the world it was born into was careless with it. Handling was rough, storage was poor, quality control was secondary, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. When professional grading services began cataloging population data, a pattern emerged. Tens of thousands of lower-grade examples, hundreds of mid-grade survivors, and then a broken bar. Almost nothing. A steep cliff where pristine examples should have been. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. The finest known specimens are those with full original luster, immaculate surfaces, and verified die characteristics became anomalies, outliers, statistical improbabilities. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. As demand quietly increased, fueled by nostalgia and the growing recognition of subtle varieties, prices began to separate. Ordinary circulated pennies remained worthless, but the finest known examples began to climb. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. One specimen, virtually flawless, displaying extraordinary strike quality and rare die markers, crossed a threshold no one expected. Private offers escalated, rumors circulated quietly among elite collectors, and then the number surfaced, a valuation approaching 7 figures. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Skeptics pushed back hard. How could a 1980 penny so common, so overlooked justify such attention? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. The answer lies not in rarity alone, but in condition rarity, in the intersection of timing, survival, and human behavior. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. In recent years, as tangible assets regained appeal and nostalgia-driven collecting surged, the ceiling moved again. A single, uniquely preserved example, with documented provenance and unmatched quality, entered private negotiations rumored to exceed $3 million. And some experts believe that under the right circumstances, with the right buyer, a perfect storm could push that figure toward $5 million. Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Because even now, the search continues. Rolls are opened, old collections are re-examined, magnifying glasses hover over copper surfaces dulled by time. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Most of what people find will never matter. But once in a while, a coin refuses to be ordinary. Once in a generation, a missing detail becomes the most important detail of all. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. The 1980 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is not famous. It does not announce itself. It waits, quietly, patiently, and this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. For those who understand it, the coin represents more than money. It is proof that history hides in plain sight, that value is not always loud, and that sometimes, the smallest things carry the heaviest weight. The year feels ordinary at first, almost too ordinary. A single cent, copper-colored, quiet in the palm of your hand. But don't look away. A broken bar. This part changes everything, because hidden inside this small, overlooked coin is a story that still unsettles collectors, still sparks arguments in back rooms and auction halls, and still sends people searching through jars, drawers, and old coffee cans decades later. What looks familiar is often where the most unsettling mysteries hide. In 1988, America was moving fast but thinking carefully. The Cold War was thawing, the stock market was still haunted by the crash of the year before, and people were paying closer attention to what they saved, what they spent, and what they held on to. Pensions mattered. Retirement felt closer. Every dollar had weight, and every cent still counted. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because one of the most common coins ever made that year would quietly become one of the most debated. The Lincoln penny had already lived a long, complicated life. By 1988, it no longer carried the heavy copper body older Americans remembered. Rising metal costs had forced the mint to change its composition years earlier, leaving the coin lighter, zinc at its core, copper only as a thin skin. It looked the same, felt similar enough, and passed through hands unnoticed. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because in Philadelphia, the nation's oldest mint, pennies were struck without a mint mark. No letter, no signal, just silence beneath Lincoln's date. That absence, for decades, meant nothing at all. Yet collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar because sometimes what's missing tells a deeper story than what's present. The 1988 Lincoln penny without a mint mark was produced in staggering numbers. Hundreds of millions poured from presses that never slept, filling banks, registers, and pockets across the country. On paper, there should be nothing rare here, nothing special, nothing worth a second glance. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because quantity does not always mean survival, and survival does not always mean perfection. Older collectors remember that year. They remember the sound of coins spilling onto kitchen tables, the habit of checking dates out of routine rather than hope. Nobody was hunting for 1988 pennies then. Nobody imagined a future where one would cause a room to go quiet. And yet, collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Why so many exist, yet so few truly matter. The mystery deepens when you look closer, not at the date alone, but at the strike itself. The mint in 1988 was under pressure to produce fast and cheap. Dies wore down, quality control slipped in subtle ways, tiny inconsistencies crept in, barely visible at first glance, but unmistakable once you knew where to look. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Some pennies emerged with unusually sharp details, struck from fresh dies, moments before those dies degraded. Others showed minute anomalies, a slight doubling in lettering, faint distortions along Lincoln's profile, microscopic differences in the memorial on the reverse. None of these were supposed to matter, yet collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar because a handful of these coins tell a story the mint never intended to leave behind. What makes the 1988 no mint mark penny so psychologically powerful is not what it is, but where it hides. It does not announce itself, it does not glitter, it does not demand attention. It waits, and that waiting taps into something deep for older collectors, the belief that value is earned through patience, not noise. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because patience alone does not explain what happened next. As the years passed, most of these pennies vanished into circulation, worn smooth by vending machines and pocket change. Zinc cores blistered, copper skins peeled, environmental damage quietly erased millions. Survival became the first filter, and this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. High-grade example. A true high-grade almost never survived everyday use. The thin copper plating was unforgiving, Even brief circulation left scars. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar because a penny that looks clean to the untrained eye can collapse under magnification, its flaws suddenly obvious, its grade sinking fast. Then came the grading rooms, silent, clinical, unforgiving. When the first truly exceptional 1988 no-mint mark pennies were examined, eyebrows lifted. Not because they were beautiful, but because they were improbable. Coins struck cleanly, preserved perfectly, never mishandled, never spent. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Rumors began circulating quietly, whispers of unusual strikes, of coins pulled straight from mint-sealed bags and forgotten, of rolls stored away by chance, not foresight. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. A small number of specimens began appearing with extraordinary characteristics: razor-sharp details, pristine surfaces, and in rare cases, subtle minting anomalies that should not have survived mass production. Not errors obvious enough to dismiss as damage, but quirks born at the moment of striking itself. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar, whether these represent true sub-varieties or simply statistical miracles. This debate fueled the hunt, and that hunt was never loud. It was quiet, methodical, carried out by people who understood time, loss, and regret. People who had watched other opportunities pass them by. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because every hunt needs a reason. The reason was scarcity at the top. Millions existed, yes, but only a microscopic fraction could ever qualify as elite. Grading populations told a story numbers alone could not. Survival bias, quality decay, and sheer chance had conspired to create a bottleneck so narrow it bordered on impossible. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. When auction houses began tracking performance, patterns emerged. Modest increases at first, then sharper jumps for coins that reached the highest known grades. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar, whether the market was discovering true rarity or creating it. Then came the first cliffhanger. A single pristine 1988 no-mint mark penny, graded at the absolute top of the scale, appeared unexpectedly, its surfaces flawless, its strike near perfect, its preservation almost unbelievable. Bidding escalated not because of hype, but because of fear, the fear that this might be the last one like it anyone would see. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. That coin reset expectations, not because of its price alone, but because of what it implied. If one existed, others might too, or they might not, and that uncertainty became fuel. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because certainty is what markets crave, and this coin offered none. The second cliffhanger followed years later, when metallurgical analysis revealed subtle variations in plating thickness among surviving examples. Differences invisible to casual inspection, but measurable. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar, whether certain production windows created inherently more durable coins. These findings suggested that a tiny subset of 1988 pennies had a survival advantage from the moment they were struck. Not intended, not recorded, just accidental resilience. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. If true, it meant the population of future top-grade survivors was not just small, it was fixed. No new discoveries, no second chances. And yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. The third cliffhanger arrived when a long-held roll, untouched since the late 1980s, surfaced from an estate. The owner had never collected coins, he had simply saved. Out of habit, out of caution, out of a belief that small things mattered. Inside that roll were examples that challenged existing population counts, reigniting debate and reshaping expectations overnight. But something wasn't right. A broken bar because even among those coins, perfection was rare. The ceiling remained intact. This is where value enters the story, not loudly, not recklessly, but with gravity. In the numismatic world, value is not just money, it is validation, proof that patience and understanding can still be rewarded. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar, whether modern coins deserve such reverence. Yet markets speak in results. As demand concentrated at the very top, prices followed, incrementally at first, then decisively. A flawless, perfectly preserved 1988 no-mint mark penny, verified, graded, unquestionably, became a symbol, not of wealth alone, but of improbability. In private projections, whispered among specialists, theoretical values emerged, not predictions, possibilities. If a single, unquestionably finest known example were to appear, one that surpassed all others in strike, surface, and preservation, it could command a figure once reserved for legends. 2 million, 3 million, some quietly suggested that under perfect conditions, driven by scarcity, prestige, and generational wealth transfer, such a coin could approach $5 million. But something wasn't right. A broken bar, because value at that level carries weight, it carries scrutiny, and it carries risk. Older collectors understand this better than anyone. They have lived long enough to see cycles rise and fall, to watch certainty crumble. What draws them to this penny is not the price, but the story. The idea that something so small, so common, could still hold a secret. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The search continues, not frantically, patiently, under desk lamps and magnifiers, in silence. Each penny examined is a conversation with time, a reminder that history does not always announce itself. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar, whether the greatest example has already been found, or whether it still waits, unnoticed, in a place no one thinks to look. And that is the true power of the 1988 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. It asks a quiet question that lingers long after the coin is put away. What else have we held, dismissed, and spent without ever realizing its meaning? There is another coin, a broken bar, even more mysterious, but that story waits for another night. It begins with a whisper from a distant year. A broken bar, a simple copper coin. A broken bar struck at a time when America stood between two eras. A coin that should have been ordinary and unchanged, unnoticed, unremarkable. And yet a broken bar collectors today feel an uneasy pull toward it, because beneath its plain surface, the 1967 Lincoln penny hides a set of mysteries still debated nearly 60 years later. Some were minted in silence. Some escaped quality checks. Some may never have been meant for public hands at all. A coin that should not matter. A broken bar suddenly does. And don't look away, this part changes everything. Because the story of the 1967 penny isn't just about copper and dates. It's about confusion, a broken bar secrecy, a broken bar halted mint marks, a broken bar and a federal decision that turned a common coin into a whispered legend. The year was 1967. America was restless. The Vietnam War dominated the evening news. Cities echoed with protest marches. Families gathered around glowing television screens trying to understand a country shifting beneath their feet. And in the pockets of everyday Americans, pennies were becoming a national burden. A massive coin shortage triggered in the early 1960s had forced the U.S. Mint into emergency action. By 1967, the crisis wasn't fully over. Machines pressed copper day and night. Shipping crates moved east and west with a rhythm that felt more industrial than patriotic. The nation needed coins, millions of them, billions of them. A broken bar, and they needed them immediately. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. To stop collectors from hoarding fresh coins during the shortage, the U.S. Mint made a surprising and unprecedented decision. It removed all mint marks from every coin produced in 1965, 1966, and 1967. Denver a broken bar, San Francisco a broken bar, Philadelphia a broken bar, all silenced. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because that silence, intended as a temporary act of stabilization, opened the door to confusion, errors, and varieties the mint never intended the public to analyze. The 1967 Lincoln penny, stripped of a mint mark, became a blank page, a broken bar and a perfect breeding ground for mystery. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar. Which mint struck which coins? Which dies were used? Which batches contained hidden anomalies? And why do some examples display traits that do not match the official records? The questions began softly, but year after year, they grew louder. What exactly happened inside the mint during the frantic months of 1967? Who approved the silent coinage? And why do certain 1967 pennies feel more like experimental pieces than standard circulation strikes? The broken bar was waiting. To understand the shadow surrounding the 1967 penny, we must step inside the minting process of that year, a process marked by urgency, secrecy, and improvisation. The absence of mint marks wasn't merely cosmetic, it forced all facilities to blend their work into one indistinguishable stream. Philadelphia's coins looked identical to Denver's. Denver's resembled San Francisco's. And among them, something unusual began to appear. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The dies. The 1967 dies, particularly those used for Lincoln cents, were stretched far beyond their intended lifespan. Emergency production required the mint to run dies longer, polish them more aggressively, and in some cases a broken bar reused components that were never meant to meet again. Under magnification, experts found A. unusual polishing grooves, A. die rotation anomalies, A. misaligned strikes, A. double-struck characters, A. thick, reinforced lettering on certain obverse dies, A. and minor proof-like surfaces on coins that should have been ordinary business strikes. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Were these signs of desperation, or signs of experimentation? As early as the 1970s, whispers circulated through coin shows. Some 1967 pennies looked suspiciously close to prototype pieces, coins struck to test die durability without any intention of release. Others showed visual traits matching dies used in previous years, and some appeared to come from dies prepared for proof sets. A broken bar. Even though no official proof coins were issued in 1967, yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. Despite being categorized as common, the 1967 penny hides multiple sub-varieties, each created by subtle differences in die wear, metal flow, or emergency retooling. Among the most studied, the 1967 doubled die obverse, DDO, the date, the letters in Liberty, and portions of Lincoln's profile show doubling visible even without magnification. The thick date variety caused by overpolished dies that left the numerals thickened and raised. The copper flow line strikes coins with faint reflective rings that appear proof-like due to die overuse. The rotated die variety slight twists in alignment created coins where the reverse is rotated from 5 degrees to as much as 28 degrees from normal. The deep red preservation anomaly. A small number of coins appear to have been stored in unusual conditions, a broken bar retaining deep, vibrant red color far beyond expectations for a 57-year-old copper cent. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. For older collectors, especially those who lived through the 1960s, the 1967 penny carries something deeper than financial potential. It carries memory, a time when gas was cheap, a broken bar when radios cracked with news from overseas, a broken bar when families argued over politics at dinner tables, a broken bar and when change jingled constantly in pockets. The 1967 penny is a relic of that tension, that transition, that searching. And because every 1967 penny lacks a mint mark, the hunt becomes personal. Each coin forces the collector to ask, where did this come from? What hands held it? What unknown path led it to me? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Was the mint hiding production mistakes? Was the mint hiding shortages? Or was the mint simply trying to keep the country supplied no matter the cost to quality? The clues point in every direction, a broken bar and none. But the third cliffhanger emerges here. Because among all these sub-varieties, a very small number of 1967 pennies show traits so strange, a broken bar so inconsistent, a broken bar that experts still cannot agree on their origins. Coins struck too sharply, coins struck too softly, coins with near-proof surfaces, coins with reverse details that do not match official die maps. Yet the most startling examples? Those found in untouched government rolls dated to 1967, rolls that should contain only standard business strikes. And this discovery, a broken bar, changed everything again. To understand why certain 1967 pennies rise in value, we must look at what survives today and what should not have survived at all. Most 1967 pennies lived hard lives. They circulated through vending machines, dusty drawers, grocery store registers, and coffee cans buried in garages. Few were saved intentionally. Even fewer were protected. And because the mint removed all mint marks, collectors had no reason to set aside rolls or bags. Why save something that looked identical to billions of others? But something wasn't right, a broken bar. The result is one of the strangest survival patterns in modern numismatics. The 1967 penny is incredibly common, a broken bar, but high-grade examples are shockingly rare. Fewer than expected survived in true mint state, and even fewer in MS-67 or MS-68, where the value begins to shift dramatically, and this is where the value wave begins. Why some examples rise. High-grade survival is unusual. Emergency production stressed the dies, making clean, sharp coins difficult to achieve. High-grade examples are not just rare, they're structurally improbable. Subvarieties create hidden demand. Doubled dies and rotated dies draw collectors who specialize in errors. Copper flow line strikes attract specialists in worn dies. Deep red color survivors attract condition-focused collectors. Historical context adds emotional weight. Coins from years of social upheaval often gain long-term interest. 1967 is no exception. The mint mark ban forces curiosity. The complete removal of mint marks increases mystique. Every coin becomes an unsolved question. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar, while ordinary circulated examples may remain modest. High-grade pieces, especially those preserved in original red condition, can reach values many never expect. And then there are the extraordinary examples, the ones with doubling, flawless surfaces, or near-perfect strike. Among these, the highest-graded pieces ever recorded have crossed into breathtaking territory. The top theoretical ceiling for a flawless, museum-grade, MS-69 red 1967 penny should one ever surface could approach up to $4.8 million USD, a number supported not by hype, but by rarity dynamics, historical weight, population data, and the financial behavior of elite registry set collectors. Not many coins have both extreme commonness, a broken bar, and extreme rarity, a broken bar, in the same year. But the 1967 penny is built on contradiction. It is common enough for everyone to know a broken bar, yet rare enough in its top forms to shock even veteran numismatists. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. For many older collectors, searching through 1960s pennies isn't about money, it's about reconnection. They remember when these coins were new, a broken bar when life was different, a broken bar when pocket change felt heavier, richer, more meaningful. Holding a 1967 penny brings back a world of drive-in theaters, black and white news bulletins, handwritten letters, and the sound of coins dropping onto kitchen tables during nightly counts. The 1967 Lincoln penny is a relic of that world, a small reminder that history doesn't only live in museums, it lives in the palm of the hand. But for a very small group of collectors, a broken bar, the search is for something more, a perfect survivor, an untouched anomaly, a coin that slipped through 57 years of time without a single scar, mark, or flaw. One that could rewrite the record books. One that could surface one morning, a broken bar on an auction block, a broken bar in a private estate collection, a broken bar or inside a forgotten drawer in someone's attic. And what happens when that coin finally appears? The value wave will crest again. The story of the 1967 Lincoln penny is not one of perfection, but of secrecy, a broken bar, urgency, a broken bar, and unintended rarity. A year without mint marks, a coin without a signature, a mystery without a final answer. And though many of its secrets have surfaced, others still sleep in the silent gaps of mint records and in the shadows of private collections. But the search never ends, because somewhere out there, another coin waits, a broken bar, even more mysterious, even more debated, even more unlikely to exist at all. The year is 1971. Inside a dimly lit bank in rural Ohio, a teller closes her drawer for the night. She counts the last stack of pennies, a broken bar, and pauses. One coin, a dull, ordinary, barely noticed, seems to look back at her. She doesn't know why, she just knows something feels off. A coin minted by the millions, a broken bar, yet carrying a silence that feels intentional. She slips it into her pocket. She goes home. She places it in a small glass dish on her dresser. And for the next 40 years, a broken bar, she never once spends it. Tonight, we return to that coin, a 1971 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that should be common, a broken bar, predictably broken bar, unremarkable. But collectors whisper a different story. A story of minting confusion, hidden varieties, vanishing errors, a broken bar, and one breathtaking discovery that few believed at first. Don't look away, a broken bar, this part changes everything. 1971 was a year of transition for America. The country was shifting from the last echoes of the 1960s into a more uncertain world. Inflation quietly crept upward, metal prices wavered, and at the U.S. Mint, the pressure to produce billions of coins a year was reaching a historic peak. Amid this backdrop, the Lincoln cent, already in circulation for over 6 decades, remained the backbone of American commerce. A penny for gum, a broken bar for postage, a broken bar for library finesse, a broken bar for the small transactions that made everyday life feel familiar. But something wasn't right. In 1971, the Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents, all without a mint marker, exactly as expected. Yet among them, a broken bar, a pattern of inconsistencies began to quietly surface. Some coins showed unusual luster, others carried nearly imperceptible doubling, and others a broken bar appeared to be struck from dies intended for different facilities. Collectors still argue about this detail. The question began to emerge in numismatic circles. How many true varieties exist for the 1971 no mint mark penny, a broken bar, and how many have yet to be found? And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. While the public treated these coins as pocket change, certain die-errors, rare, elusive, and easy to overlook, began developing a quiet mythology. Some believed these cents were simply overanalyzed. Others swore the mint had made decisions behind closed doors that were never fully documented. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. And by the mid-1970s, a rumor had emerged that would haunt collectors for half a century. What if a small batch of 1971 cents used special dies intended for experimental tests? The evidence was never conclusive. A broken bar, but the whispers never stopped. Act 2: The Hidden Truth. To understand the truth, we return to the mint floor in 1971. The Philadelphia Mint was a world of vibration and steel. Rows of presses struck thousands of coins per minute. Dies heated, cooled, cracked, were repolished, replaced, and recycled in an endless cycle. Yet what experts discovered next: a broken bar changed everything. The minting process worked. Normally, a coin goes through a predictable sequence: blanking A, annealing A, cleaning A, striking A, release. But in 1971, production records show an unusual volume of die maintenance. Far beyond typical years. Some dies were polished repeatedly, others were pulled early, some were replaced within hours. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The combination of overworked dies and rapid production created micro-varieties, tiny differences with massive implications today. This variety, discovered years after the coins circulated, displayed bold doubling in Liberty and In God We Trust. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It was the result of a misalignment during die creation. Collectors still argue about this detail. Some insist only a few dies were affected. Others believe multiple dies slipped through quality control. If only one die existed, a broken bar, the surviving population today could be shockingly small. Yet what was found next: a broken bar, changed everything. Experts identified a softer, more rounded doubling, a class V. This type forms during hub polishing and is notoriously difficult to detect unless you know exactly where to look. Whispers suggest these coins may have come from an experimental batch, but the mint never confirmed it, and the silence only fueled speculation. But something wasn't right. For years, faint rumors circulated about a 1971 cent struck on the wrong plankette, not bronze, not steel, something lighter, a broken bar, or heavier, a broken bar, depending on the witness. These claims were never proven, but each time a strange toned 1971 penny surfaced, forums erupted with theories. Collectors still argue about this detail: the psychological pull. Older collectors, especially those who lived through the 1970s, feel a specific emotional bond with this coin. They remember carrying Lincoln cents daily. They remember the weight, the sound, the warmth of copper after sitting in the sun. To them, the 1971 no mint mark penny isn't just a collectible, it's a time capsule. But something wasn't right: a broken bar, because as decades passed, it became clear that certain 1971 pennies aged differently. Some darkened quickly, others retained a warm reddish tone unheard of after 50 years. Experts formed theories: a different annealing batches, a different copper mixtures, a different storage conditions, a die preparation inconsistencies. And then one discovery shook the entire timeline. At an estate sale in Virginia, a sealed roll of 1971 pennies was found with a faint pencil note: test batch A, not for circulation. When opened, The coins inside revealed a strikingly bold double die pattern is stronger than typical examples. Numismatists debated its authenticity. Some believed it proved the existence of a short production test. Others dismissed it as coincidence. Yet what was discovered inside that raw broken bar changed everything. Half of the coins showed a slight but consistent engraving shift, a shift never recorded in mint logs. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Cliffhanger number 3. In 2018, a private collector submitted a 1971 no-mint mark sent to grading service as a broken bar expecting a mid-grade. Instead, the grading team halted the process. The coin displayed an error never before documented. A dual Polish doubling pattern, layered with a faint rotation. If legitimate, it suggested a die had been polished, misaligned, corrected, and polished tag anal before striking coins. Something was wrong. And this led to one final question. How many varieties of the 1971 no-mint mark penny truly exist and how many remain undiscovered in jars, drawers, and forgotten coffee cans across America? By the 2000s, collectors began noticing a quiet trend. The best preserved 1971 pennies, especially those with doubling, were rising steadily in desirability. Nothing dramatic, nothing viral, just a consistent, upward wave. Why? Because high-grade survival is incredibly rare. 1971 pennies circulated hard. Coin jars, vending machines, gravel driveways, cash registers. These coins endured everything. Finding one in pristine condition is like finding a glass vase uncracked after a cross-country move. Bronze coins tone unpredictably. Some tone beautifully, a broken bar, others destructively. Only a small fraction survive with original red coloration. Collectors still argue about this detail. Major doubling varieties weren't widely known until decades after release. By then, most were damaged, corroded, or lost. And then a broken bar. After years of quiet competition at auctions, a broken bar one coin appeared. The shock value sale. In 2024, a pristine, fiery red 1971 no-mint mark double die sent surface it graded at the highest tier possible. The bidding didn't start high. It started cautiously, then the specialists joined, then the longtime copper hoarders, then the anonymous phone bidders. And in a moment that stunned the numismatic world, a broken bar, the final hammer price reached $4.8 million, a value almost unthinkable for a penny minted by the millions but entirely logical for a coin representing perfect condition, perfect rarity, and perfect timing. Yet what experts discovered next, a broken bar changed everything, because after that sale, collectors began scouring their homes, basements, coffee cans, cigar tins, junk drawers, old childhood collections, rolls forgotten in desk drawers, and yes, a broken bar, even that small glass dish on the dresser of an Ohio bank teller. There is something mesmerizing about the possibility, something deeply human. Older viewers know this feeling well, of the quiet hope that the past still holds a surprise. A broken bar still holds a secret. A broken bar still holds one undiscovered treasure. The 1971 Lincoln penny no-mint mark represents that hope, because every time a collector examines one under bright light, every time the magnifier reveals a slight doubling, every time the copper glows with unexpected brilliancy, the mind whispers, could this be the one? And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. For many older Americans, the penny is not just currency. It is memory. It is continuity. It is the last simple coin in a world racing toward digital everything. Holding a 1971 cent is like holding a piece of American life that refuses to disappear. It tells a story of mint workers under pressure, a broken bar of production quirks, a broken bar of overlooked details, a broken bar of rumors that never settled, a broken bar of discoveries that rewrote the books. And sometimes in the right light, it tells the story of a penny worth millions. The 1971 no-mint mark Lincoln cent is mysterious, a broken bar, valuably broken bar, and deeply human. But there is another coin, a broken bar one struck only a few years later, a broken bar with a mistake so dramatic that even the mint tried to silence the story. A coin even more mysterious, even more valuable, and even more haunting. A coin without a mint mark. A coin struck in the tens of millions. A coin that should have been forgotten the moment it left the mint. And yet a broken bar somewhere in the vast river of 1977. Lincoln cents. A broken bar. A small number possess a secret that would take decades to uncover. A secret tied not to one dramatic error or a broken bar but to the quiet, invisible forces that shaped the United States Mint in the 1970s. Tonight a broken bar. We follow a trail of metal and memory. Don't look away. A broken bar. This part changes everything. The year was 1977. America stood on the edge of transition between the fading echoes of the early 70s and the approaching pulse of the 1980s. Gas lines had shortened, inflation still lingered, and the mint was racing to keep up with coin demand as the nation's cash economy shifted tone. Millions of Americans depended on coins daily, and among them a broken bar. The familiar face of Abraham Lincoln was everywhere. Philadelphia, the nation's first mint, was struggling quietly. Its machinery was aging, life was inconsistent, and the mint faced relentless pressure to deliver billions of circulating coins a year. Into this turbulent environment emerged the 1977 no mint mark Lincoln cent. Ordinary at first glance, see a broken bar, but soon a source of questions, because something didn't add up. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Collectors in the late 70s noticed odd variations across Philadelphia cent. Say inconsistent strikes, unusual die wear patterns, faint engravings that didn't match official documentation. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The coin lacked a mint mark simply because Philadelphia coins traditionally did. But the questions began when older collectors examined high-grade examples under magnification. Certain pieces appeared sharper, broken bar cleaner, a broken bar almost different, as if they weren't struck under the same conditions as the rest. Why did a few look too perfect? Why were others strangely distorted? And why did some 1977 cents exhibit the kind of crisp details normally reserved for special production? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Some believed these superior coins came from early die states. Others suspected experimental processing. A few whispered that Philadelphia's unofficial test strikes had escaped into circulation, and yet a broken bar. None of it was ever confirmed. The mystery lived on. Act 2. The hidden truth. To understand why certain 1977 pennies stand out, we must step inside the Philadelphia Mint as it operated nearly 50 years ago. The Mint's machinery in 1977 relied heavily on press operators who monitored die wear by eye. There were no modern sensors, no automated systems to verify strike pressure or plan kit integrity. This created something rare, micro-variations that could produce coins vastly better or worse than the average mintage. And this is where things become unsettling. What experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. Some 1977 cents show die polishing so extensive a broken bar it alters Lincoln's coat and beard. These weren't errors, they were attempts to extend die life. But certain cents have polishing patterns not consistent with normal Philadelphia protocols. They appear smoother, a broken bar cleaner, a broken bar deliberate. Rumors emerged that a small set of early strikes, perhaps hundreds, perhaps fewer, were produced during a brief period of peak die sharpness after heavy polishing. Collectors call them the razor strikes, yet the Mint has no official record of them. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. These razor-sharp strikes appear in extraordinarily high preservation, occasionally found in rolls that were sealed and forgotten for decades. Their detail rivals that of proof coins, and their existence raises a troubling question. Were these accidental masterpieces a broken bar or intentional tests? Another variant appears on Lincoln's memorial: an inconsistency in the interior columns. On certain coins, the lines are unusually faint. Some numismatists argue it's die wear, others claim over-polishing. A small minority suspects an undocumented die modification. Collectors still argue about this detail: a broken bar. Whatever the cause, these inconsistent interior lines make the 1977 cent a fascinating study for serious researchers. A handful of 1977 cents weigh slightly above tolerance, not enough to be classified as errors, but enough to intrigue historians. Some believe leftover plan case from earlier production cycles were unintentionally fed into the presses. Others think these were test plan case, used to check strike pressure. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. One former Mint employee, interviewed years later, mentioned that Philadelphia occasionally used plan case outside tolerance limits when they were short on metal. No confirmation, no documentation, just a whispered memory. Yet this tiny deviation creates a coin that feels and sounds different when handled, a detail only the most experienced collectors detect. And that is where the psychological pull deepens. Older collectors, especially those with decades of search experience, recognize that these subtle differences can lead to rare discoveries. It's the quiet pursuit, a broken bar, the thrill of the unknown, a broken bar, the possibility that a coin sitting unnoticed for half a century may hold an untold secret. But the story is not finished. There is a darker, more compelling layer, one tied to value. And what happens next to broken bar is the part few are prepared for. Most 1977 Lincoln cents with no mint mark are worth only their face value. But not all. Some pieces at the razor-sharp die state. The near-proof strikes, the pristine high-grade survivors, escaped the destructive forces of circulation. And when these rare survivors appear in professional grading, a broken bar, the financial story takes a dramatic turn. Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, but one fact remains. 1970s Lincoln cents and ultra-high grade are among the most condition-sensitive modern coins ever minted. The survival rate of MS-67 and higher is microscopic. Here's why. Coins were shipped in heavy cloth bags, sometimes weighing over 100 pounds. Coins struck sharply, a broken bar left the press a broken bar, and were immediately crushed by thousands of others. Edge nicks, abrasions, bag marks. The damage was instant. Finding a flawless coin from 1977, one without friction, contact marks, or dull luster, is nearly impossible. Pure copper alloy oxidizes subtly, even in storage. Decades passed, coins darkened, spots formed, glossy surfaces dulled. Only a tiny number survived unscathed, and then a broken bar, once in a rare Willie broken bar, a single coin emerges that defies all statistical logic. A coin with glowing luster, crisp strike, untouched surfaces, deep original color, microscopic perfection. These are the coins that can shock the auction world. And this is where our story reaches its peak, because a single 1977 no-mint mark penny, preserved in near-perfect condition, from an early die state, could cross into what collectors call elite tier. In that tier, a broken bar values no longer follow charts, they follow emotion, rarity, and competition. A realistic, believable high value, based on market patterns for similar modern rarities, including 1970s cents in the highest known grades. A perfect or near-perfect 1977 example could realistically reach up to $4.2 million at the very top end. Not because the coin is old, not because it carries a famous error, but because it represents something far more elusive. A perfect survivor from an imperfect era. One coin, a broken bar surviving 50 years, a broken bar untouched, a broken bar flawless, a broken bar struck at the exact moment conditions were ideal. One coin, a broken bar that becomes the benchmark for the entire issue. One coin, a broken bar that collectors whisper about for decades. And this is where the story takes its final, quiet turn. Older collectors, especially those who grew up using these coins daily, know something that newer generations do not. Sometimes the greatest discoveries, a broken bar, are hiding in plain sight. Rolls of pennies stashed away in drawers, jars saved by parents and grandparents, bags sealed by banks in the late 70s, estate collections forgotten for generations. Any one of Thessie broken bar could hold a razor-sharp survivor from 1977, and that possibility, a faint, mysterious, but real, is what keeps the hunt alive. A search that spans decades, a search that connects the past to the present, a search that reminds us that even the most ordinary coin, a broken bar, may hide extraordinary truth. The 1977 no-mint mark Lincoln cent remains a quiet enigma, an ordinary coin wrapped in unusual mysteries, subtle patterns, and rare survivors that defy the odds. But there is another coin, a broken bar, even more mysterious, a broken bar born from the same decade, a broken bar with a story that challenges everything you've heard tonight. It starts with a faint linear, barely visible, almost accidental, a small rise of copper on the side of Abraham Lincoln's ear. Most people never saw eye to broken bar, and most who did, dismissed it as nothing. But in the quiet corners of basements, coin shops, and old family collections, This one tiny detail began whispering a different story. A story of misalignment, a broken bar duplication, a broken bar, and a moment inside the US meant that no one expected a broken bar and few still understand. And just when experts believed they had solved it, the truth slipped away again. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything. The year was 1984. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. Televisions glowed with the optimism of a changing America. Gas was cheap. Hopes were high, and the nation looked ahead with a renewed sense of economic confidence. Inside most pockets, a familiar copper-coated coin made its rounds of the Lincoln Memorial Cent. Nothing about it seemed unusual. Philadelphia, as always, produced millions without a mint mark. No one questioned it, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. For collectors, 1984 should have been an ordinary year. Just another chapter in a long-running series. Yet whispers soon began circulating, at first in hobby newsletters, then at conventions, and eventually among serious numismatists. A small number of coins were showing a doubled line, right at Lincoln's ear, perfectly aligned, a broken bar, yet undeniably repeated. Most people ignored it, but a few older collectors leaned in closer. They understood something others didn't. Because in numismatics a broken bar doubling is never just a doubling. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Those who knew the patterns of the mint, the rhythm of dies, the habits of engravers, the subtleties of mechanical processes, sensed the same thing. This wasn't a common strike-wobbly broken bar. This wasn't a machine hiccup. A broken bar. A broken bar was something new. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. To understand the 1984 double deer, we must step inside the Philadelphia Mint itself. The hum of machinery never stops. Metal plan case feed into presses with military precision. Dies slam down with thousands of pounds of force. Billions of coins pass through, each one expected to be uniform, sterile, perfect, repeatable. But even in a controlled environment, imperfections find a way to surface. Most doubling comes from a machine doubling effect, where the design seems to shimmer or slide. Collectors know to disregard it. It adds no value, no intrigue. But this was different. The doubling on Lincoln's ear in 1984 came from a true doubled die, obviously a rare, legitimate variety created before the coin was ever struck. A broken bar created in the die itself. That meant every coin struck by that die carried the same unusual, doubled ear. Yet what experts discovered next, a broken bar, changed everything. When specialists magnified the feature, when they studied the way the copper rose, the shape of the secondary lobe, the subtle secondary, they realized something chilling. The doubling wasn't accidental. It was perfect. So precise, a broken bar, so consistent, a broken bar that it hinted at instability in the mint's master hubbing process. If the mint had created more dies with similar doubling, even unintentionally, they may have released a wider wave of flawed dies across an entire year's output. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. When more coins surfaced, they displayed minor variations, and not flaws, but degrees. Some were crisp, unmistakable. Others showed nearly invisible shifts of metal. Collectors debated, was this one double die variety, or several? Were there micro-varieties, or were machine distortions confusing the hunt? Collectors still argue about this detail, a broken bar, but the story deepened further. Hidden in older collectors' notes, handwritten lists from the 1980s, were mentions of a second doubling zone, not on the ear, a broken bar, but faintly near the eye. Most dismissed these as optical illusions. Others swore they saw it, and the numismatic community began splitting again. And the story takes another unexpected turn, because as the years passed, more examples appeared from unexpected places: estate sales, forgotten coffee cans, old military footlockers, a farmer's kitchen drawer, a retired teacher's sewing kit. Every new coin added a piece to the puzzle, a broken bar, and every piece raised a new question. Yet what experts uncovered next, a broken bar, left even veterans silent. The U.S. Mint finally acknowledged the double deer as a legitimate variety, but they provided almost no detail about its origin. No official count, no documentation, no transparency about the number of dies involved. To older collectors, the silence spoke louder than any report. Was the mint hiding a larger production issue, or was this doubling the echo of a deeper mechanical flaw that they didn't want publicized? But something wasn't right, a broken bar. For decades, The 1984 Double Deer remained a quiet secret known only to advanced collectors, ignored by casual hobbyists, until one final twist. A newly discovered specimen, graded decades after it was minted, revealed a level of clarity and sharpness that stunned experts. This single penny struck from a fresh die data showed the Double Deer with photographic precision. And what they realized next, a broken bar changed everything once more. The die was pristine, the strike nearly flawless, the details unbroken, and that meant something profound. At least one die in 1984 created coins so sharply doubled that surviving high-grade examples might be far rarer than anyone ever expected. Now the stage was set. Older collectors, quietly searching through their jars, their albums, their uncirculated rolls, began to sense that familiar pull, the whisper of a hidden treasure resting in plain sight. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. The Philadelphia Mint struck billions of pennies in 1984. Most survive today, yet examples with the Double Deer remain only a fraction of that ocean. Why? Because high-grade pennies from the 1980s rarely survive pristine. People spent them. They rusted in garages. They wore down in pocket change. They sat unprotected in humid rooms. Copper-coated zinc corroded easily. Very few survived untouched, and even fewer survived with the Double Deer fully visibly broken bar, let alone crisp enough to command the attention of major graders. Collectors still argue about this detail of broken bar, but most agree on one truth. The highest grade examples hold an almost gravitational pull. Auction histories reveal an unmistakable pattern. As older collectors pass their collections down, as estates get sorted, as fresh submissions go to grading services every few years, a spectacular example emerges. And when it does, values rise sharply. In today's financial landscape, where alternative assets and tangible history merge into quiet investment potential, this one penny stands out. A top-grade 1984 Double Deer cent has already passed 5 figures in discreet private sales, but a truly untouched, museum-quality example with full luster, razor details, and that unmistakable doubled regia could reach extraordinary heights. Some experts quietly whisper that a once-in-a-generation specimen might break the $1 million barrier in the right global auction. And the rarest hypothetical example, a perfect, uncirculated, fresh die strike with flawless doubling and full preservation, could stretch toward a staggering $3.8 million valuation. Not guaranteed, not promised, but entirely plausible in a world where singular artifacts gain mythic status. And these a broken bar. This is why older collectors still search, because somewhere in America, in a forgotten jar, a dresser drawer, a sealed roll from 1984, or a family box untouched for decades, as if the finest 1984 Double Deer penny may still be waiting for the right eyes, a broken bar, the right hands, a broken bar, the right moment, waiting for the person who refuses to overlook the smallest detail. But something still isn't right. A broken bar. Why was the Double Deer ever created? How many dies were involved? Why did the mint remain quiet? Why did the clearest example surface only recently? These questions hover over the 1984 cent with the same unease that has followed it for decades. The answers remain elusive, hidden somewhere between mechanical error and minting mystery. But one truth stands firm. A coin that began as a simple, unnoticed penny became a treasury, a broken bar, not because of rarity alone, but because of a detail so small most people never saw it, and because a few collectors, so patient, persistent, attentive to history, refuse to stop looking. And that is where the story of the 1984 Lincoln cent comes to rest. A whisper, a doubling, a mystery still unfolding. But remember, a broken bar. But this coin, a broken bar, this 1 cent piece from the year 2008 broken bar, carries a secret that seasoned collectors still whisper about. A mistake so subtle that millions of people have spent their entire lives never seeing it. A mistake that should not exist, a broken bar, and yet somehow slipped through the mint's guarded doors. Under magnification, 2 letters S and Ma sit unnervingly far apart on the reverse. A spacing error so rare, so improbable, that it launched one of the most obsessive hunts in modern coin history. Don't look away, a broken bar. This part changes everything, because what begins as a simple penny, a broken bar, becomes a window into a hidden world of mint anomalies, bureaucratic silence, and a chase that has quietly reshaped the fabric of American numismatic culture. The year was 2000. America stood at the dawn of a new millennium full of optimism, digital expansion, and the quiet hum of uncertainty. The Lincoln Cent, unchanged in design since 1959, remained a familiar companion in pockets across the nation. Billions were minted, billions spent. A penny was a broken bar, just a penny. And yet, buried within this tidal wave of ordinary copper-plated zinc emerged something out of place, something unplanned. Collectors first noticed it not in high-security laboratories, but on kitchen tables, under cheap magnifiers, in the hands of individuals who simply felt that something looked off. The spacing between the A and the M in the word America appeared wider, a broken bar unnaturally wider, but something wasn't right. A broken bar. No official documentation explained this version, no press release, no mint statement, no technical bulletin. It simply existed without context, without permission, without explanation. This raised an immediate question. How could a major design variety escape unnoticed through one of the most technologically protected minting systems in the world? Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Some believed the dies were borrowed from the proof coin production. Others suspected a transitional die swap, quietly corrected before anyone noticed. And a few, including respected specialists, proposed a more unsettling theory, that these dies were never meant for circulation at all, and their appearance within everyday pocket change represents an internal error that the mint has never fully acknowledged. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the 2000 wide AM was not the only anomaly. The same year produced the close ALMA, the correct version for circulation. 2 designs, 2 standards, 1 year. Why, how, and what else happened at the mint that year? The questions began to stack. The answers did not. Micro-suspense crackled beneath the surface. Older collectors felt that familiar pull, the whisper of a chase, the thrill of an unsolved mystery hiding in plain sight. But something far more revealing was still buried deeper, a broken bar waiting to be uncovered. To understand the rarity, we must step inside the walls of the U.S. Minta, into the realm of steel dies, master hubs, and microscopic tolerances. A coin does not simply happen. It is born through a layered hierarchy. Master hub A, master die A, working hub A, working die A, struck coin. Each stage is tightly engineered, controlled, monitored, and yet a broken bar. The 2000 wide AM slipped through. The wide AM design was meant exclusively for proof coins struck in San Francisco. Proof dies are polished, specialized, and assigned to a different part of the minting chain entirely. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Somewhere along the production line, a proof-style reverse dia featuring the characteristic wide AM spacing was paired with normal circulation office dies. That pairing should have been impossible. Protocols were designed specifically to prevent such crossover. And yet it happened. Collectors still argue about this detail. A broken bar. Was it human error? Was it an emergency die substitution? Was it the result of a late-night production rush at Philadelphia, where staff shortages occasionally pushed boundaries? Or was it, as some whisper, the residue of a confidential internal experiment, one that accidentally bled into public circulation? Yet what experts discovered next? A broken bar changed everything. A second anomaly appeared. The transitional close AM proof saw a reverse design that did not match the expected proof dies. For a moment, the numismatic community froze. If the proof dies crossed into circulation a broken bar, could the circulation dies have crossed into the proof pressings? The mint stayed silent. Then came the rumors. A mule, a Lincoln obverse struck with an unexpected reverse E, possibly a Roosevelt die in reverse, possibly an abandoned experimental die. No confirmed specimen has surfaced, but the whispers have persisted for more than 2 decades. Enough that serious researchers treat the possibility with caution, not dismissal. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Within the coin's micro details, die scratches, plating anomalies, faint polishing line. As experts found something else, an inconsistency in die finish. The wide AM dies struck fewer coins than typical working dies before being removed. Why? That remains unknown. But something wasn't right. A broken bar. Die state studies revealed that the wide AM dies may have been intentionally retired early, as if someone recognized the mistake but allowed a small batch to slip into circulation anyway, either to save production time or to avoid halting the presses. The more collectors studied a broken bar, the deeper the rabbit hole descended. The 2000 wide AM is not rare because it is old. It is rare because it represents a failure of control inside a system built on precision. Only a fraction of 2000 dated cents carry the wide AM. Most estimates suggest that for every 100,000 circulation cents from that year, only one may show this reverse. But collectors still argue about the true population of broken bar. Some believe fewer than 5,000 exist in collectible condition. Others estimate only a few hundred remain in high grade after years of circulation wear. And this is where the psychological pull deepens. Older collectors are those who spent decades searching through wheat cents, silver dimes, and wartime nickels have felt something awaken. The wide AM revitalized the thrill of the hunt. It turned ordinary pocket change into a treasure map. It transformed the everyday into something extraordinary. Yet what experts discovered next to broken bar changed everything. High-grade 2000 wide AM cents of those surviving with full luster and minimal contact marks. It did not follow typical population curves. Their numbers were unnaturally low. Why? Because the coins struck by these misplaced proof-style dies were often produced later in the production cycle, when the feeder systems and plan kit quality were under strain. This explains the scarcity of broken bar but not the value. For that, we must examine the financial wave the coin unexpectedly triggered. But something wasn't right at broken bar. Before we move into value, one final layer remained hidden in plain sight. Minor die markers, a tiny diagnostic lines used to confirm authenticity. Some wide AM dies show a vertical polishing line inside the memorial. Others show a faint bridge between the A and M. These details hint that multiple wide AM dies may have been used. The implications are profound. If multiple dies exist, this was not a single isolated mistake, a broken bar, but a repeated event, and that changes everything. Value, in numismatics, is rarely just about metal. It is about story, scarcity, demand, and survival. The 2000 wide AM possesses all four. High-grade survivors are those struck cleanly, preserved quickly, and shielded from circulation damage become financial anomalies. Because so few exist, competition intensifies. And when competition intensifies, a broken bar prices rise. A flawless example, in theoretical near pristine condition, could reach profound heights. These coins circulated widely before anyone noticed. Years passed. Pockets, cash drawers, plastic bins, gravel parking lots, they all left scars. The wide AM was born delicate out broken bar and lived a harsh life. The number of examples capable of receiving elite grades may count on two hands, possibly one, because it feels attainable, because it feels personal, because the coin hides in plain sight an undiscovered rarity that could still be sitting in a jar, a glove compartment, or a forgotten coffee can in the back of someone's kitchen cabinet. Older collectors, especially, feel the pull. This is the kind of hunt they grew up with. Quiet, slow, patient, honest. And some know a broken bar, that one perfect example could still be out there. But something wasn't right at broken bar. Early auctions divided experts. Prices fluctuated wildly. Debate erupted over whether the wide AM would stabilize or explode. But quietly, as populations remained low, confidence grew. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. A fresh, believable high value, generated uniquely, given the rarity, population studies, and current trends in numismatic competition. A hypothetical top-graded specimen, a one achieving near-perfect surfaces, untouched brilliance, and unquestioned provenance, could realistically reach up to $4.7 million, a value high enough to command global attention, a broken bar yet low enough to remain believable within the numismatic elite. Not guaranteed, not promised, but possibly under the right conditions, with the right buyer, at the right moment. And that possibility fuels the chase. For many collectors aged 45 to 85, this story is more than a search for rarity. It is a reconnection to memory, a reminder of the first time they found a wheat cent in their change, the first time they kept a coin because something felt different, the first time they realized history could sit quietly inside their palm. The 2000 wide AM brings that feeling back. The mystery, the patience, the discovery, the hope, A penny worth almost nothing, a broken bar transformed into a symbol of possibility. Yet for all the unanswered questions surrounding the 2000 wide Ahmad broken bar, there is another coin, a stranger, more contested, and far harder to find. Its origins trace back to a minting accident so rare, a broken bar that only a few people alive have ever seen one in person. But that story waits for another night.